Hi, I'm Daniel, 33, and 3 weeks ago I learned that nothing destroys a family faster than generosity, especially when that generosity costs $2.30 million. I grew up believing my parents were the kind of people who would be proud of me if I ever made something of myself. Turns out, they were only proud as long as I stayed small. But I didn't stay small. I built a real estate analytics company from a one-bedroom apartment with a leaky ceiling and a Craigslist desk that collapsed twice, 10 years later. I sold it for 7 figures and bought myself freedom, and stupidly, I thought I could buy my parents happiness too. Their 35th anniversary was coming up, and I wanted to give them something unforgettable, not a dinner, not a cruise, something life-changing, something that said, "You raised a good man." So I bought them a cliffside estate overlooking the Pacific, glass walls, infinity pool, a backyard that literally dropped into the ocean, the kind of place where sunsets look like they were painted with gold. I kept the surprise for months. I handled all the paperwork in secret. I even worked with the designers so the inside would match what they always dreamed of. My dad wanted a workshop, done. My mom wanted a huge kitchen with marble counters, like the ones on cooking shows, done, everything tailored to them. And then came the anniversary party. I invited extended family, friends, old neighbors, everyone who ever mattered to them. It was supposed to be their big moment, their celebration, their home. When they arrived and the crowd parted and the estate stood behind me glowing in the sunset, my mom gasped, my dad froze, people cheered, someone cried, for a split second. I felt like the son they always wanted. But here's the thing no one tells you about giving your parents a mansion. You don't just hand them keys, you hand them status, power, a new identity. And if they're not ready for that, it rots something inside them. The shift happened so fast I didn't catch it at first. My mom's smile, too tight, my dad's handshake, too firm, the questions from guests. Your son did all this for you. And the way my parents kept redirecting attention away from me. Then, halfway through the night, my mom whispered something to my dad, his jaw clenched, and before I could ask what was wrong, he grabbed my arm and pulled me out onto the balcony overlooking the water. What the hell were you thinking, Daniel? He hissed out. I blinked. What? This. He gestured toward the estate. You just made us look like freeloaders. The words hit harder than a punch. Dad, I gave you a house. No. He snapped. You gave yourself a stage. Before I could respond, my mom stormed out behind him. Daniel, how could you humiliate us like this? She cried. People are saying we raised a son who thinks money fixes everything. I stood there speechless, holding the keys to a home worth more than everything they'd ever owned combined. And then, because the universe enjoys timing, my cousin Mark wandered outside drunk and loud. Danny! You gonna buy the rest of us houses too? He shouted. My parents' faces hardened in unison. My dad turned to me, voice low and cold. Get out. I actually thought he was joking. Dad, get out of this house right now. But it's your house, not tonight. He snapped. Not after this circus. The sliding door opened behind us, guests stared, my parents stood shoulder to shoulder, united only by disappointment. My mother added the final blow. You always make everything about you, Daniel, even our anniversary. And then, in front of 50 people, my father shoved the keys back into my chest and said the last words I expected to hear on the happiest day I'd ever planned. You're not welcome here. And that's how I ended up standing alone on a cliff in a tailored suit, kicked out of a house I bought, with nowhere to go, homeless, humiliated, and not knowing that someone at that very party had been watching me the entire time, preparing to whisper something that would flip my entire life upside down, something that would show me the truth about my family, and the truth about myself. I didn't drive away immediately. I just stood there in the estate's driveway, staring at the house glowing warm behind the glass while I felt cold all the way down to my bones. You know that feeling when you replay a moment over and over, trying to convince yourself you misunderstood it? That was me, gripping my car keys so tightly they dug crescents into my palm. My parents couldn't possibly mean it, not really, not after everything I'd done for them. But the truth was already there, sour, metallic, and impossible to swallow. The party kept going inside, music, laughter, clinking glasses. I was outside like some rejected extra from a movie I paid to produce. I finally got into my car and drove. No plan, no destination, just headlights cutting through the dark Pacific highway until the estate disappeared from my rearview mirror. I ended up parking near a public overlook a few miles north, sat there with the ocean roaring below me, telling myself I would go back tomorrow. We'd talk like adults, we'd clear things up. Except I had forgotten something important. Humiliation spreads fast in a family, faster than wildfire. My phone vibrated. First text from Aunt Michelle. Daniel, what happened? Your parents are very upset. Then Uncle Rob. Son, sometimes good intentions go too far, give them space. Then my brother Ethan. Congrats on proving you're still the same self-centered jerk. I stared at the messages until the screen blurred. Ethan lived off my old loans for years. Funny how gratitude evaporates the moment you stop enabling people. It got worse. My parents had already formed the narrative. He embarrassed us, he flaunted his wealth, he made us look incapable. A $3 million gift had transformed into a personal attack. And somehow, this whole disaster still felt like my fault. I leaned back in the seat and laughed. Actually laughed. It sounded like someone else's voice. And that's when someone knocked on my window. I jumped hard enough to hit my elbow on the steering wheel. Outside stood a woman holding her shoes in one hand and the hem of her dress in the other. Hair blowing wildly in the coastal wind. She was familiar, but I couldn't place her right away. I rolled down the window a crack. Hi. She crouched to eye level. I'm sorry, she said softly. I didn't mean to scare you. I saw you leave the party. Right, she was there, one of the guests, maybe? Cousin's friend? Interior decorator from my mom's circle? Before I could ask, she added. They shouldn't have spoken to you like that. My throat tightened. I hadn't realized how bad I needed to hear anyone, say that. You don't even know me, I muttered. She smiled faintly. I know enough. I watched your father shove the keys at you like you were the one who ruined the night. She hesitated for just a beat, then said something that made my stomach drop. And I heard your mother tell the neighbors, he thinks money gives him the right to outshine us. My chest hollowed up. So that was it. Not gratitude, not hurt, not misunderstanding, envy. The simplest, ugliest answer. I swallowed hard. Why are you telling me this? She took a breath, then leaned in a little closer. Because someone needed to, and because you're about to learn something even darker about your family, and I don't want you walking into it alone. A cold wave rolled up my spine. What do you mean? She looked over her shoulder, as if making sure no one had followed her. Then she said the sentence that would rip open everything I thought I knew about my parents. Daniel, that house wasn't the only thing they hid from you. She slid into the passenger seat before I could even tell her to. She shut the door quietly. Like the darkness outside had ears. I finally recognized her. The woman from earlier who'd been talking with my mom near the bar. My mother introduced her as Lydia. But only in the dismissive way she introduces people she doesn't think matter. Lydia wasn't dismissive now. I cleared my throat. Okay, what did you mean by they hid something? Her hands twisted around her shoes, her voice dropped. Your parents told people a very different story about how you got your money. My stomach tightened. What story? That you lied, stole, cut them out of your business, that you cheated a partner and bought their house to cover your tracks, that you're trying to buy forgiveness. Every word was another punch to the ribs. I blinked hard. They said what? She nodded. All night, quietly, subtly, like people were supposed to read between the lines. Your mother even suggested you might have gotten money from dangerous sources. A bitter laugh scraped out of me. Amazing, I gift them a mansion and they call me a criminal. She hesitated. It gets worse. I leaned forward, gripping the steering wheel. My parents don't even understand how to open a PDF. What else could they possibly ruin? Lydia inhaled slowly. They didn't just question how you made the money, they implied you weren't stable, that your success came after a breakdown. They painted you as unpredictable, narcissistic. My mouth went dry. They were doing character assassination, on purpose, at their own party, in a home I bought for them. But why? I whispered. Lydia studied me for a moment, then said something I will never forget. Because people like your parents don't know how to love someone who surpasses them, they only know how to punish them for growing. My vision blurred for a second. I didn't know whether to cry or put my fist through the dashboard. Then Lydia reached into her clutch and pulled out her phone. I didn't want to get involved, she said. But when I saw them humiliate you like that, I thought you deserved to know the truth. She tapped open a recording, and suddenly my parents' voices filled the car. Father. He threw money at us so he can feel superior, classic Dan, always trying to compensate. My mother. People like him, they get reckless, he's unstable, you'll see, he'll burn through the money, they always do. Then laughter. Actual laughter. My parents talking about me like I was a stranger whose downfall they were eagerly waiting for. When the recording stopped, the only sound was the ocean hitting the rocks below us. I swallowed, throat tight. So everyone heard this? Most enough. Her voice was gentle. People didn't know what to believe. It made you look unhinged. Unhinged. The same word my father once used during an argument years ago, right before cutting me off financially in college. I sat there shaking. Why did you record them? Because, she said, I've seen families like yours before. My head turned toward her. And because I know what it looks like when someone is being set up. A cold chill crawled up my neck. Set up for what? She hesitated, choosing her words carefully. For exile, she said. Legal or social, they're preparing the narrative, the kind people use, before disowning someone publicly. My pulse kicked hard. That's insane, I muttered. They'd never. She cut me off softly. Daniel, they already kicked you out of your own house. She wasn't wrong. I pressed my palms to my eyes, trying to force the world to make sense again. And that's not the only thing, she added quietly. I lifted my head. There's something else they did tonight, something you haven't heard yet, and when you do, you're going to understand exactly why they wanted you gone. Lydia didn't speak right away. She just stared through the windshield at the dark coastline like she was weighing whether to drop the bomb or walk away and let me sleep peacefully in ignorance. Finally, she exhaled. Your parents met with someone tonight, privately, in the study behind the wine bar. My eyebrows drew together. Who? She hesitated. A lawyer. Something cold and sharp went straight through me. No, I said. No way, they would have told me if, Daniel. She interrupted softly. They didn't want you to know. My breath stalled. What were they talking about? I asked, though part of me already sensed the answer. I didn't hear everything, she said. I didn't want them to see me, but they were discussing the deed transfer and future control. I blinked, not understanding. Control of what? The estate. I almost laughed. Almost? What control? I gave it to them. The house is in their name. She winced. Not exactly. I stared at her. What do you mean, not exactly? She took out her phone again, scrolled for a moment, then turned the screen toward me. It was a photo, blurry but unmistakable, of a document sitting on the desk in the study. My last name. My parents' signatures. A legal title change. Except, it wasn't transferring the house to them. It was transferring it away from all of us. Wait, I whispered. Wait, this doesn't make sense. Why would they? They're putting it into a trust, Lydia said. One that you have no access to, no authority over, no inheritance rights to. My heart hit my ribs. They're cutting you out entirely, Daniel. The car suddenly felt too small, too hot, too suffocating. I shook my head. No, they would never do something like that behind my back. Lydia looked at me with a kind of sadness you reserve for someone slowly realizing their house is on fire. They already did something like this behind your back, she said. Tonight, in front of you. The party, the humiliation, the shove, the exile. It wasn't emotional. It was strategic. Why? I whispered. Why now? Why like this? Lydia folded her hands. Because someone told them something about you, something they think gives them justification. My eyes snapped to hers. What did they hear? She took a breath. Your brother. Of course. Of course Ethan was involved. The guy who still owed me money from 2018. The guy who once tried to borrow my credit score. What did he say? I asked, bracing myself. She didn't sugarcoat it. He told your parents you were planning to use the estate as a tax shelter, that you'd eventually claim they were unfit to manage it, that you'd take it back and sell it. My jaw dropped. That's insane. Why would he say that? Because, Lydia said, your parents believed it, and because Ethan told them something else, something ugly. Her eyes lowered. What? I forced out. Did he tell them? That you had a breakdown last year, that you were unpredictable, that you were obsessed with proving yourself, that you were becoming dangerous. The air left my lungs like someone had punched it out. I didn't have a breakdown, I said quietly. I took a month off. I went to Bali, I meditated, I surfed, I tried to figure out what I wanted to do next. Your brother told them it was a psychiatric episode, she said. He told them he was scared of you. I actually felt dizzy. And you know what scared them most? She continued. I forced myself to look at her. He told them you planned to move into the estate with them, permanently, and that you'd start controlling who came and went. I stared at her in disbelief. He made me sound like a threat. Lydia nodded. That's why they called the lawyer tonight, that's why they locked down the deed, and that's why they kicked you out before you could object. Silence filled the car, thick, heavy, and brutal. Finally, I whispered. So they think I'm capable of, what? Taking over their lives? No, she said softly. They think you already started. The betrayal burned in my chest so hard it almost felt physical. My own parents believed a jealous, insecure brother over the son who just gave them a $2.3 million home. But Lydia wasn't done. I heard the end of the meeting, she said. The lawyer asked if they wanted to proceed with the additional step. What additional step? She looked at me with a strange expression, part warning, part pity. They asked whether the trust should prevent you from challenging it, legally, forever. I went cold. Daniel. She placed a hand lightly on my arm. They're preparing to erase you from the estate completely. My voice broke. Why would they do that to me? She squeezed gently. Because they don't want your success, she said. They want your silence. And that was the moment, sitting on a cliff at midnight with a stranger and the Pacific roaring below, that I realized this wasn't a family argument. This was war. I didn't know what answer I expected when I asked Lydia why my parents would try to erase me from the estate, but it sure wasn't the one she gave. They're scared of you, Daniel, she said. Not of what you'll do, of what you'll discover. My eyebrows knit. Discover what? Money, a lot of it, money that should have been yours. Her voice was steady, but she watched me like she expected the ground to shift under my feet. You remember your college fund? She asked. I felt my stomach drop. The one my dad said evaporated in the market crash? She nodded slowly. It didn't disappear, it tripled. The air went thin. No, I whispered. No, he showed me the statements. Fake ones, she said gently. The real account grew to over $700,000. And they used your social security number for all the investments. It felt like someone had driven a spike into my chest. They stole my identity? They used it, she corrected, because they assumed you'd never ask questions once they convinced you it was all gone. I leaned back, breath shaking. The humiliation at the party was bad enough, but this was rot going back years. And that's why they panicked tonight. She continued. You're wealthy now, you have resources, lawyers, investigators. If you ever dug into their finances, they'd be exposed. I let out a hollow laugh. So instead of admitting what they did, they decided to paint me as the unstable one. Yes, she said softly. Because if they can establish you as incompetent, anything you claim becomes delusion. I rubbed my palms over my face. My parents hadn't just rejected my gift, they were laying groundwork for a legal ambush. Why are you helping me? I finally asked. You could have stayed out of this. Her jaw tightened. Because your parents did the same thing to my sister, she said. She worked for them, trusted them, they bled her finances dry and left her to drown. She never got back up from it. The room tilted. I'm not letting them do it again, she whispered. Something inside me hardened, not anger, not grief, but resolve. Okay, I said. What do we do next? And that was when Lydia told me something that changed the course of the night. We go back to the estate. There's proof hidden in your father's study. Driving back up that cliffside road felt different the second time. On the way out, I'd been defeated. Now, I felt like someone reclaiming stolen territory. Lydia navigated us through the side entrance nobody ever used. The house was quieter now, just soft murmurs, clinking glasses, the tail end of a party pretending it wasn't about to implode. But in the study, sitting behind my father's desk like he owned the place, was a man in a charcoal suit. He stood when he saw me. You must be Daniel, he said. I've been waiting. I glanced at Lydia, who gave a small nod. My name is Carter Hayes, he continued. I'm the attorney who refused to finalize your parents' trust transfer tonight. Why? I demanded. Lawyers don't usually turn down billable hours. His expression didn't change. Because the transfer was fraudulent, they were attempting to place property into a trust they didn't legally own. I froze. What? Carter folded his hands. The deed never finalized, a missing signature, so currently, the estate belongs solely to you. My parents had tried to cut me out of something that wasn't even theirs. I felt a slow burn rise inside me. And there's more, Carter said. Their attempt to file a competency petition could freeze your accounts and cast doubt on every business decision you've ever made. Anger sharpened into something colder. They were really planning that? They had a meeting scheduled for tomorrow morning, Carter confirmed. If they succeeded, you'd have to prove your own sanity in court. My hands clenched. They're willing to destroy me, I said. For money. For control. Carter corrected. Lydia stepped closer. Daniel, open the drawer. We moved behind the bar cabinet, and she slid the shelf aside, revealing a thin brass lock. She knelt, popped it open with a hairpin like she'd done it 1,000 times, and pulled out a thick folder. Your father keeps a second set of records, she said. The real books, the ones he never meant anyone to see. I opened the folder, and felt the floor disappear. Offshore accounts, forged signatures, wire transfers under my name, notes about funneling dividends from an investment portfolio I never knew existed. My voice cracked. How long has this been happening? Over a decade, Carter said. We suspected fraud, now we have proof. I stared down at the papers, my entire childhood rearranging itself in hindsight. This ends tonight, Carter said. If you wanted to. Footsteps echoed behind us. We turned. My parents stood in the doorway, Ethan lurking behind them like he'd been waiting to enjoy the fallout. My mother's voice snapped first. Daniel, what have you done? I held up the folder. I opened the drawer you never meant me to see. My father stepped forward. You're misinterpreting private documents. No, Carter said calmly, moving between us. He's reading evidence of fraud and identity misuse. My mother's face went pale. Ethan scoffed. There he goes, paranoid again. I laughed once sharp. Paranoid? You scheduled a competency petition for tomorrow. My father bristled. We were protecting you from yourself. By stealing my estate? My investments? My name? Silence answered. Carter stepped forward. Mr. and Mrs. Hale, you are trespassing. The property belongs solely to your son. I suggest you leave. My mother tried one last angle. Daniel, we're your family. No, I said quietly. Family doesn't erase you the moment you outgrow them. My father opened his mouth, thought better of it, and turned away. My mother followed. Ethan glared at me like I'd ruined some lifelong scheme. But this time, I didn't shrink. They walked out, and for the first time in my life, I didn't follow. Once the door shut, the house felt different, like someone lifted a weight that had been sitting on the walls for years. Carter gathered the documents. I'll file everything first thing in the morning, your assets, your ownership, your legal standing, all protected. They won't be able to touch you again. And the charges? I asked. That's up to you, he said. You have enough evidence for a criminal investigation. I looked at the folder, the lies, the theft, the manipulation, and felt something surprising, not rage, just clarity. I'll think about it, I said. Carter nodded and stepped out, leaving me and Lydia alone in the quiet study. She looked at me gently. You did the hardest part, you stood up to them. I let out a long breath. Feels like the first time I've ever done that. We walked to the balcony overlooking the ocean. Dawn was breaking, a thin line of gold on the water. Where do I go from here? I asked. Forward, she said. Without their control, and maybe, with someone who actually wants you to succeed. I met her eyes. Something settled inside me. Not triumph, not revenge. Freedom. As the sun rose over the cliffside, I felt it fully for the first time. I wasn't the son they tried to keep small. I wasn't their captive. I was finally my own man.